We're so happy to have you here this afternoon now, and we'll do a little business, and then we'll have you let someone graciously introduce you. I wanted to welcome all of you and tell you what's been going on with the library, and but I'm going to let Blake come up in just a few minutes and tell you some things that are happening in the very near future, which we've all been looking forward to. And something I wanted to emphasize to you, you know this is the time of the year that you're supposed to pay your dues. And that is the main source that we use for money to give to the library to buy books and other things that they need, and we contribute through that. So if you know someone that's not a member and you would like to join, just let us know. And you also, we have some forms here that we can give to you, and you can fill those out. And but we also have a new treasurer coming in this fall, and her name is Shelley Peters. That's Blake's mom. She looks like his daughter, though she's so young looking. And also, we want to tell Marianne Rivers how much we appreciate her years of serving as our treasurer. She's been with us for 9 years, and so she's done a wonderful job. And but she's not leaving the Friends. She's just giving that job up for the time being. Also, our next meeting will be in September. And the lady that will be speaking then, the author, her name is Trudy Nan Boyce, and this is her book over here on the table. So try to come and hear her and find out about her book. She is a retired police officer in Atlanta. So she has a lot of stories to tell. So you will enjoy her. And so Blake, I'll let you come and tell them what's going on.
Hello, everyone. All right, I just wanted to let y'all know a few of the things that are happening in the next few weeks and months at the library. We're going to have our usual summer program here like we do every year with performers for all of the children, and that starts in June and will run in June and July. Our book sale room, which we've started up in place of the yearly Friends sale, has been doing very well. So if y'all or anyone you know has books that they want to donate, we would be more than happy to take them. We use all the money from that to go towards the programs for the library, and right now we're being able to cover those costs just from what we can do here in the building, and I'd like to keep that up. Also, with summer coming up, if anyone's bored or anyone has any grandchildren or anyone who needs to stay out of trouble for the summer, we're always busy during the summertime and we can always use the extra help. So if anyone knows anyone who would like to volunteer during the summer, we would love to have them. Tomorrow, we are showing Hidden Figures, which is the movie that they filmed here in Monroe. We're going to be showing that in this room at 4:30 tomorrow. I'm expecting a big crowd for it, and since it's filmed here in Monroe, if anyone's interested in coming, that's open to anyone who wants to attend for any age. So we'd love to have you for that. And the other big news is that the project y'all have heard me talking about in one form or another for the past year or so is actually taking off now. We've chosen a contractor for the job, and he'll be here within the next few days, and I'm hoping that we'll actually start work on the renovation project here within the next month or so. So by the time y'all come back for the next meeting in September, this place is going to look pretty different on the inside. Now, if anybody has any questions about that or wants to know anything about it, it's my favorite subject. So find me and I will talk to you as long as you will let me about what we're going to be doing here. And if you have any questions about the summer program, about the library, or you just want to talk to me, I'm always here. I pretty much live here, so just find me and I'll be happy to talk to you. Thank you.
Okay, today's guest is Monroe native and Walton Tribune columnist Nowell Briscoe. He said he literally grew up in the library's old location in the now historic City Hall building where his aunt, Ruby Landers, was librarian from 1953 to 1957. It was in those rooms that he came to love and appreciate books and literature from the books his aunts gave him and encouraged him to read. It was also through old issues of the Walton Tribune he developed a penchant for Monroe history. In today's program, Nowell will share with us a bit of the early beginnings of the library up to 1953, when his aunt became librarian, and then share how, through patience and determination, His aunt instilled in him the passion he carries forward today for the written word. Now Briscoe.
Thank you so much for coming. It is looking out at these faces, people I have known practically all my life. It's a thrill and an honor to stand here in front of y'all and talk. Before I start, I want to introduce two people I want to express appreciation to. One is to my old friend A.C. Marshall, who drove all the way from Gainesville to attend this presentation. And another person I'd like to introduce and extend appreciation to is Edward Allman. Edward's dad, Ed Allman Jr., was one of the founding members of the original library board when it was established in 1938, and was one of the longest serving officials of the board in the capacity of treasurer up until the late 1970s. And I'd also like to thank Marie Preston for the wonderful portrait she has given us of the library when it was brand new, for people to see what the library looked like after it was just after it was born. And so today I want to talk about the library's early years along with the years that I had with Ruby from 1953 to 1957. And I want to extend my appreciation to Blake Peters, manager of the library, for his help and assistance in seeing today's presentation became a reality. The love and appreciation Blake pours into his job, not only for the books and periodicals which comprise so much of this building, but the computers, the children's area, the book sale room, and every nook and cranny which make up this building, he shows love and compassion for daily. The library is fortunate in having a person with his enthusiasm and dedication in helping more Monroe folks come to love and appreciate the written word, along with the various other resources the library offers. I'd like to also thank Norma Barnes, president of the Friends of the Library, and Barb Greer, vice president of the Friends, who constantly strive to maintain interesting, thought-provoking topics of book-related events to help bring the community together and create a better understanding of the role the library, which began decades ago, plays in Monroe and Walton County. I salute you. Today's event is important to me for two reasons. It was in this library, but not this building, then housed in two rooms on the right side of the old City Hall building on Broad Street, that I began my introduction into the world of books and literature, along with what I now call Old Monroe, learning about the city and its people from the old issues of the Walton Tribune, which were stacked on metal shelves in the back room. The person who opened my eyes to the wonders and excitement books could afford me was this lady here, my great aunt Ruby Landers, who was librarian from 1953 to 1957. And also of particular importance is this year marks the 60th anniversary of her death on August 3rd, 1957. I will share with you a bit more about Ruby and how she gave me the passion, love, and desire for books and the varied worlds they opened for me. But first, I want to give you a brief history of the beginnings of how a group of dedicated Monroe folk who loved books were determined that their city have as fine a library as possible for the time. Two favorite quotes concerning books are, "Homes with books are homes with culture," and indicative of the culture of a people is their interest in good books. A good example of the culture of Monroe in the early days goes back to the year 1905, when the Book Lovers Club was organized. As far as can be determined, this club marked the first effort in providing local library services. It has been said that to take advantage of this service, the members had to appear between 4 and 5 every Wednesday, only in good weather, in the rooms set up by the officers of the club for the patrons to select the volumes to read. Another favorite quote on books goes, "You open doors when you open books, doors to knowledge, to wisdom and inspiration. Books have immortalized man's knowledge, enabling him to build today on yesterday for tomorrow." In January of 1906, the group who formed the Book Lovers Club the previous year met to elect officers for the group. The new committee was comprised of Ms. Robert L. Nowell, Sr., President, Ms. Claire Felker, Vice President, and Ms. Josie Reed, Secretary and Treasurer. Ms. Lizzie Hammond and Ms. Moena Michael served as alternate librarians. In November of that year, concerns arose that the new public school system had no library. So the book club considered transferring its books to the Church Street School building, where it might continue serving its own small membership and at the same time forming a nucleus for a school library. Another early book circulating unit found a home on a shelf in an uptown store on the west side of Broad Street between Spring Street and West Highland Avenue. Ms. Edwin P. Nowell, Jr. was active in organizing and promoting this group in 1922, asking each member to provide a book for rotation. Many of the town's most prominent citizens were listed among those members. These two book lovers groups came together to form on March 31st, 1936, Monroe's first public library at the local high school, with the school's volumes forming the core of the collection. Miss Mary Nell Breedlove acted as general librarian, while Miss Thelma Gates served as the school librarian. When a massive fire destroyed the building and books in December of 1936, J. Roy Nunley offered free space to the library in the Nunley Building on Broad Street. This offer was greatly accepted, and the library was once again in operation. October 25th, 1938 marked a pivotal day for book lovers when a group of the aforementioned individuals plus several others met in the second floor quarters of the Nunley Building in an attempt to strengthen the fledgling library. There were less than 24 books on the shelves, but that day began the reorganization of the Monroe Public Library, forerunner to the Monroe-Walton County Public Library. Named to this first library board were Mrs. W. O. Dean, Chairman, E. L. Allman, Jr., Treasurer, Ms. Thomas R. Aycock, Ms. James A. Clark, and L. D. Haskew. It should be happy knowledge for all the friends and library patrons to know that the original minutes from these organizational meetings, as well as the follow-up meetings, still exists and is fiercely protected under Blake Peters' watchful eye. In 1939, with the construction of the new Monroe City Hall, 2 rooms of the building were provided to house the library, which served in its capacity until August of 1958. Now, this is a picture of the old City Hall, and what I call Ruby's Library was over here on the right. And on August 1958, the Memorial Library on Bowl Springs Avenue became available. This building was built and given to the high school in 1946 by Mr. and Ms. Harry B. Lanyas as a memorial to their son who lost his life during World War II, along with honoring all the Walton County men and students who entered the service from 1941 to 1945. When the new high school building opened on Bryant Road in 1958, the school library transferred its holdings to the spaces set aside there, making the Memorial Library the perfect choice as the new home for the public library. The library stayed in this location until it moved back into its former location at City Hall for a short while in 1968, while awaiting the renovation of the old Monroe Post Office. And on November 6, 1972, all the books, periodicals, and other ephemera were moved into its new location, where it remained until 1988, when this facility was built and became the permanent home for Monroe and Walton County book lovers. A comprehensive look into the history of the library to 2013 was the basis of a column I wrote for the Tribune last year. Now I would like to share with you the story of my time in the library from 1953 to 1957, when Aunt Ruby was librarian, and I was introduced to the magic and wonder of the written word. Several people in this group, I'm sure, can remember the wonderfully funny novel author Patrick Dennis wrote about his larger-than-life aunt, Marion Tanner. The book was called Auntie Mame. For me, Ruby was my Auntie Mame of the day. She held several positions in town prior to becoming the librarian. She was an early city telephone operator, secretary to one of the city's early dry cleaning businesses, and office manager for the Monroe Freezer Locker. As the freezer locker was closing, Ruby was looking for a new job. And for her, it was a happy circumstance when current librarian Frances Knox and her husband moved to Atlanta, and Ruby was appointed as the librarian effective February 1953. I was 6 years old. Ruby was passionate about a lot of things: nice clothes, large hats, her ever-present Pall Mall cigarettes, beautiful flowers that she grew in my grandmother's garden on Edward Street. She was passionate about her Katie Caldwell Sunday School class, along with being a devoted reader. Becoming librarian was a happy marriage for her and the library because of her penchant for reading and books, along with her many friends who came to the library simply because she was there. During her years at the library, she gave me quite a few books. Some I have on display here today. This display is about books, book collecting, how to develop and create libraries of your own, plus 2 notebooks that I have comprised containing related articles on these topics. This is the very first book Ruby gave me. It's called I Have a Book by George W. Stewart and Eleanor Warren Stewart. And the book is dedicated to those who have a book and want more. Ruby had her mind set that I was going to come to love and appreciate books and the messages they conveyed. On the days after school when the library was not busy and I was with her, she would pull me into her lap and read to me from books she thought I would enjoy. I received books on my birthday, at Christmas, and just about any other time Ruby deemed appropriate. She was always on the lookout for books she thought would enhance my enjoyment and learning, whether they were new books or discards from the library. Whatever, they always found a grateful home with me. When I was 9, I had enough books to fill a small bookcase, and I was on my way to becoming a book lover. There are 4 books I have with me today which are especially meaningful. The first one is the book I showed you about books. The second one is a book, it was a discard from the library called Arithmetic Can Be Fun. Ruby gave me this book because she knew that I was having trouble with numbers in grade school, and she thought this book might help. The third book she gave me, given to me, which was on her last Christmas with me in 1956, was Tom Sawyer by Mark Twain. It was not until years later it came to me the realization of the importance of who the illustrator was for this book. It was Norman Rockwell. Wanting to make sure I had a good background in my Sunday school classes, she gave me this beautiful book copy of Eggemeyer's Bible story book, a book I treasure to this day. The time spent in Ruby's library was magical. I learned a lot about Monroe history and its citizens from reading old issues of the Walton Tribune, carefully stored on the shelves in the back room. It was at that library where I received my first pair of Wrangler blue jeans, which I happily jumped into in the supply closet across from her desk. On days when my mother was involved with a bridge club or other activities, it usually fell to Ruby to look after me until Mother could come get me. When I walked up Church Street to the library from the grammar school or the junior high school building, Ruby would be watching for me at the window. And coming through the door, I was given a Hershey bar with almonds. If there were no patrons there, Ruby would pull out a book, sit me on her lap, light a cigarette, and begin reading. Many times I was wrapped in her arms while a wreath of cigarette smoke circled our head. Those days, the library was gossip central. And who better to give and receive its local news than Ruby? Walking into the library during those days when the gossip was heavy, it was sometimes difficult to see Ruby's desk. The cigarette smoke was so thick. When I would walk through the door, all conversation would cease immediately. Ruby would give me my Hershey bar and relegate me to the back room to look through the old issues of the Tribune and other magazines until the conversations ended. On one particular day, I walked in, and it was my mother and Ruby who were engaged in some serious talk. And to the back room I went with my Hershey bar. That was the day I became curious in trying to figure out who were some of the names I read about in the Tribune, and just where were some of the businesses and houses whose photos were sprinkled across the pages of the paper. I came into the front room, interrupting their conversations, dragging an issue of the paper with me, with chocolate streaks from the Hershey bar across the front, asking in a very serious manner who, what, when, and where. My mother took a big puff of her cigarette and laughed as she said, "Honey, you were born 40 years too late." Both Ruby and my mother got a big laugh over my blooming interest in Monroe's history. Besides reading, the years with Ruby were filled with learning about books. She showed me how to appreciate and care for them, and the knowledge one could amass from reading. Mixed in with these lessons was love, always love. She passed along to me introductory books on history and language she thought would aid me in my early classes. Like I said, my birthdays were celebrated in the garden she had at my grandparents' home on Edward Street, and a book or two were always among the gifts. In our many conversations, talking as one adult to another, she gave me stories of our city and its citizens. She had me hooked, and she knew it. Those years spent with her was just like being with Patrick Dennis's Auntie Mame. I had no idea that my time with her would be so short. The night of my 11th birthday, Friday, August the 2nd, 1957, while I was enjoying a steak supper and game of bingo at the VFW, Ruby suffered a heart attack at the Hotel Monroe where she was living, and steps away from the library. She summoned a friend at the hotel to stay with her until through that night, and swore her to secrecy over what happened. She had not been well for the last 2 weeks and not able to make her usual trek to the library. During this time, I would visit her every day or so and run errands so she could rest and regain her strength. That Saturday morning, when I went down to see her, she was lying on her bed but gave me no indication anything was wrong. I told her about my birthday dinner at the VFW and did a few errands for her. Moments before I left, she gave me a gift, what suspiciously looked like a book wrapped in bright paper, and my Hershey bar. She looked so sweet, relaxing on her bed, dressed to the nines as she always was, her hairbrush and hand mirror next to her, all the while withholding a terrible secret. When I was ready to leave, I leaned down for a kiss. She took my hand and said, "Baby, if anything should happen to me," and stopped. Seeing the confused look on my face, smiling up at me, she continued, "Never mind. I will see you soon, and just know I love you so very much." That was the last time I saw her. She had a premonition, and she knew her time was short. But she was determined to see her baby one more time and give me one last book. When our visit had concluded, she was ready to go. She suffered another heart attack while she napped and died shortly after I left. And when death came for her, she was ready. Dressed impeccably, holding her brush and mirror, always wanting to look her best. Ruby left me a great heritage, one that has lasted 63 years and continues to this day. To quote Thomas Jefferson, and with thanks to Ruby, I cannot live without books. One of these tables holds copies of a poem by Edgar A. Guest, which describes perfectly the feeling I have about books. There are plenty of copies here. I hope you'll take one. And today, in honor and loving memory of Ruby, I am presenting this portrait of her to the library, where once again she can enjoy being in a place she so loved, surrounded by books and people. Blake, would you please come up and accept this portrait to hang in the library so she can watch over you as you continue to do the great job you do, just like she would expect you to do.
Thank you, Nell.
Thank you for allowing me this opportunity of telling you what this library means to me and the memories it evokes. No matter how far I roam, it will always be my home away from home, knowing Aunt Ruby is here. Thank you.